Welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Miller. Every week, I chat with fascinating people from all walks of life in order to bring you knowledge, inspiration, and insight. If you enjoy the show, you can support it by subscribing, leaving a review, and sharing it with a friend. This is the Jeremy Miller Podcast. Danny Miranda? I feel so nervous chatting with you today, dude. I feel like this is how, I don't know, like a high school basketball player would be trying to play pickup with Michael Jordan or something.
I'm not at Michael Jordan levels in podcasting, but I'm very grateful for your just whenever that we have nerves or whenever we feel like this is a big moment or this is a moment that I need to prepare for, I need to feel differently for.
Yeah.
It's always interesting to tune into ourselves and see what exactly is arising. Why is it arising? And what does it mean about us and what is going on in the broader ecosystem? So,
my gosh, dude, this is gonna be a good podcast. I can tell already. You're such an aware person.
Yeah.
Have you always been like that, or is this like a learned thing?
Oh, this is so learned in so many ways. And awareness for me began when I was 24. And for context, I'm 28 years old now. And I spent the first 24 years of my life living in the conditioning and the programming of everyone else. What do other people think? How do they think you should operate? How do they think, like what school should you go to? Just based on other people. And awareness to me is really tapping into yourself and tapping into what you're feeling in that moment and putting that on the pedestal, putting what your own interests and what is actually expressing through you being the thing that you tap into in any given moment. And so awareness started when I was 24, when I started meditating, and it's just deepened and deepened over the past 4 years. So
was there something that happened at 24 that like sparked that? Like,
yeah.
Oh, I got to start meditating, or I got to have this shift.
Yeah, I was just talking to Video King Pablo about that. I mean, Video King Pablo came in from Colombia, first time meeting him. What a legendary guy. But we were talking on the way here about how I was doing this thing called drop shipping. Are you familiar with drop shipping?
Yep.
It's like you take products from China and you sell them in the United States or abroad, and you never touch the products yourself. And I was doing it and I was like, this feels really unfulfilling. Even though I'm successful at this and I'm making money doing this and making great friends doing this, I don't feel good internally. And so something's got to change. And so I quit doing that. And then I started doing 75 hard and I started meditating in September of 2019. And my awareness started to arise for the first time. And life started happening in a completely different way. It was like I stopped. I remember, I will never forget the first moment I recognized awareness. I'm at a stoplight and I'm driving a car 90 days after meditating. And I want this stoplight to be, it's a red light. And I want it to be green so bad. Be green, be green, be green, be green. I want this light to change. And I hear my voice in my head say that. And I'm like, why? I start laughing at myself. And it's like, where else in life are we doing that? Where else in life where in my own life did I want it to be a different way than what it was? And recognizing that allows you to drop in to the present moment. So
interesting.
Yeah.
Were you able to like determine where else you were doing that in parts of your life? Like just trying to force things that maybe shouldn't have been?
Yeah. So I'm from New York. So New Yorkers have this mindset and this attitude that you can control the world just based on your work ethic and your belief and your ability in yourself. And I love that. I'm all for that. And also, I lived in San Diego for a year when I started meditating, and San Diego's energy and Hawaii's energy, which I know you've spent time in, is this feeling of like, slow down. Something greater than you is controlling this whole thing, and tap into that energy. So I think it's both. I think one part of you is great to just go, attack, find your goals, figure it out. There's another part of you that is like, this whole thing, you didn't choose your heartbeat. You're not choosing this moment. There's some things that happen that are greater than you could have controlled to make happen. On the way here, Video King Pablo from Colombia.
I love that name.
He's a legend. He's an absolute legend. And he's coming in, and the Uber driver I think he's Argentinian, and his family, or he might have been Venezuelan, I'm not sure which one, and his family sells coffee from Video King Pablo's hometown.
Oh, whoa.
So it's like witnessing moments like that happen where you're just like, I didn't control that situation. That's not something I could have put on my vision board to make a reality. It just, I had to be aware to recognize the beauty of that moment and I feel like something other than me guided that moment into making it in reality. And I call that something else God.
Yeah. So that's going to be my next question. What do you think is controlling all that? You think it's is it God in like the biblical sense, like Christianity? I mean, there's a million definitions of a God, like demigods and Jesus, and like there's so many different variations and incarnations of it. Like what do you think it is?
Yeah, I think it's the perfection of all circumstances, and the idea that something else other than us has created those circumstances to be perfect in every moment. That's my current working understanding and idea of God.
I love that. So just this other is it all knowing, would you say? Like all knowing being or all controlling? Like have you gotten into Sam Harris at all? You seem like somebody that would maybe listen to some Sam Harris.
I haven't.
Really?
I haven't listened to one Sam Harris podcast in my life.
He's got this lecture. Also, I apologize for the dogs. They're like, this is the most distracting podcast studio on planet Earth.
I love the dogs. They're great. And I appreciate you calling out what you're feeling in the moment.
Yeah, they're, well, 'cause it's hard not to when they're wrestling over a toy.
So cute.
But Sam Harris has this lecture where it's like free will versus determinism, essentially. Mm-hmm. And his take is that free will just doesn't exist and everything is essentially predetermined, not in the sense of like, oh, there's a God and this is God's plan, but like Danny is Danny. And because of the molecules in your body and the DNA you have, every decision that you make, even though you think it might be conscious, you're making that decision because of the DNA you have. Therefore, it's like everything is predetermined based on, it's like a really odd kind of abstract concept, but like, I'm curious what your take is. Like, do you think that we have free will? Like that we can all make these conscious decisions and impact our realities? Or is it all just up to this all-knowing kind of creator or God?
Yeah, I think it's such an ultimate question, right? Yeah. And it's one I don't have an answer that I feel comfortable with in like knowing that it is the quote unquote truth. But I do know that I tend to lean towards things that feel good. And it feels good to believe that I have some control over my day-to-day existence. It leads me to better outcomes if I feel like I have some sense of control. And at the same time, I do my best effort. I will control what I can control. And there's some greater plan that is working out for my gain.
Yeah, so a little bit of both, basically.
Yeah,
I like that. I think I'm more on that side as well, because it's. I think if you lived a life of it's pure determinism, I have no say in the outcome. It's like, then why show up every day? I think you have to have some sense of I have control and I have free will and I have a say in what happens in my reality.
Yeah. Because that leads you to feeling like, okay, I'm going to run a marathon. I'm going to actually take the steps to change my reality. Even if that the all-knowing God has created you so that you could live in this reality, like it does make me feel better to know that, or feel like I have some control over it all.
Yeah, I like that. So you did drop shipping.
Yes.
And then we did 75 hard. Did that 75 hard change your mind on drop shipping? And did you quit doing that?
I quit drop shipping and then started 75 hard directly after.
Oh, okay.
And then I was like, I'm going to become a personal trainer. And I started meditating and I was like, wow, I really love fitness. I love how I've changed my body as a result of what I've done. And I can help other people do that as well. So I go into the gym that's across the street from where I'm living. And the owner of the gym is also doing 75 hard at that time. And it's like that's a synchronicity. That's like, all right, you're on the right path. Keep going with this. So I did that for 6 months. And some part of me felt like I'm not fully expressing everything I am. And Yes, let's go.
It's like an amen. Oh my god. Oh, now we acknowledged them. Now they're back again.
How many episodes have you done with dogs?
Like 15 or 20.
Oh my god.
Yeah, might be the craziest they've been.
You think they just feel our energy?
I think they do. You've got they're digging the Danny energy right now, and they're like, oh, usually they're chilled out by now, but maybe because he's here too.
Yeah,
he's like
Baba.
Video King.
Video King's here. he's getting them going.
Yeah. Okay, sorry.
No, you're good.
6 months of personal training.
6 months of personal training, and then feeling like there's something more because I'm not using my mind, and it feels like I can give more. And it feels like this isn't the truest representation of who I am. And I moved back home from San Diego, back to my parents' house, and I started to do what I was doing as a kid, which was write online. I started writing blog posts, 2 blog posts a week. And then it led to, I want to talk about these blog posts with people. That led to me putting out on Twitter, who wants to talk on the phone? And then
I've never heard somebody do that.
Me neither.
How did that go?
It was amazing. It was so amazing, man. Like, to learn, this is in June of 2020. June of 2020, people are like in the depths of COVID. People are experiencing it so differently, whether they're in Texas or California or Hawaii or wherever they are. They're having a slightly different experience of something that we're all going through together, which is rare in human history, that we could connect with people during that time. This was potentially the first time everyone in the world was experiencing the same thing, and you could get different perspectives on that.
Yeah.
So I was curious, what are people like? What's going on in their world? And I had amazing conversations with people. Like, I felt high after doing it. The other person felt high usually, and it was like, wow, that was a special thing. Let's record that. And a recorded conversation is just a podcast.
Right.
So that's how the podcast began. And
oh, wow.
That
so you put out on Twitter, like, I'll call you, or like, what do you want to talk about? How did that go about?
So I had about 5,000 to 10,000 followers on Twitter at the time. And it was from building up from the dropshipping days. And people just wanted to talk. People were curious. People were like, they wanted to talk with me. I wanted to talk with them. And some people were in dark places. Some people were in light places. Some people were figuring it out. It was a really interesting reality that I was entering into just by like, what would happen if you just put out on Instagram, like, who wants to talk on the phone? You would immediately have 100 people who wanted to talk to you.
Right.
But what would you gain from that? You might learn, like, what are these people like? What do they value about me? I mean, it's a really interesting thing when you're able to talk to people who have some familiarity with you, as well as just random people in the world. Like, some of these people didn't know who I was, and some did, and it was all great.
Wow. How many phone calls did you do? Do you remember?
I would say probably like 20 or 30 before I realized, like, this is really good, and I need to record these.
Were they just like total random strangers, like people that followed you, or was it like, did you seek anybody out where you're like, oh, Alex Hormozy or somebody like that?
Yeah, no, it wasn't like I was desiring to have anybody in particular say yes to this phone call. I was just like, I'm open to see what comes back. And some people were really struggling and needed someone to talk to. Some people were excited. So it was just a really special, like, 2-month period. It was so pure.
Yeah.
You know?
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
Such a unique idea.
Yeah.
I've never seen anybody do that. That's so cool.
I think it's just because it was innate to my being, and that's being aware.
Yeah.
Right? I could say that's a weird thing. That's something that most people wouldn't do. But I said, no, this is what I'm feeling. So, like, let's lean into that.
Yeah, that's a hard thing to do, is to, especially if you have a feeling of something that you've never seen done before, or that you don't see any other human doing. Because at least to me, my initial thought is like, oh, it's like an intrusive thought that maybe I shouldn't have. Or it's like, oh, this is some idea that maybe I shouldn't have because I've never seen anybody else talk about this or do it this way. So maybe let's avoid that. That might be like the natural inclination at first. But I think the more you lean into that, I mean, that's what makes you is your uniqueness, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what are examples of that from your own life where you've felt like, I want to do something, and then you've done it or you haven't done it? And how has it turned out for you?
I think maybe on like a small scale, just like different things within a video of like, oh, I've never seen somebody put the text this way or cut the music or cut it this way. Those like very small, subtle things that some people might not even notice, but that's what creativity is like leaning into whatever your subconscious wants you to do. It's so interesting.
And also,
you're flipping it back to me. The inner podcaster's coming out.
Yeah, and also accepting your weirdness.
Yeah.
It takes a part of you to accept that you are your unique self, which you can call weird, which is something that you could either put down or bring up, depending on how you look at weird.
I think weird is good. I mean, weird is unique.
Yes.
Because it's like, who wants to be average?
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And we spoke about this on our podcast about where we have put down weird in my life. I've put down weird because I wanted to be just neutral and a pleasing to everyone. And I just wanted everything to be like, I didn't want anyone to not like me in any way. So if I was weird, then that gives someone the opportunity not to like me.
So now when you have a thought come up or something that you want to do, but it might be deemed as weird.
Yeah.
How do you navigate that? You just say, screw it, I don't care what people think, or how do you go about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's dependent on the circumstance and situation, and I'm still working through all of the places where I'm not free. But yeah, for the most part, I'm very comfortable in my own skin, and I'm very comfortable owning the reality that I would like to create and putting it out into the world. So
I like that. That's good.
Who doesn't want to be around people who want to be themselves?
Right.
And are comfortable being themselves. Yeah. Everyone wants to. And also, if they don't, that's great. I'm very happy for people who don't want to spend time with me or be around me. That's also like, God bless.
Damn. Spitting wisdom out here, dude. I love it.
Is this supposed to be a running podcast, by the way?
Not really, no. I mean, I had a guy on yesterday who he had cancer 4 different times and like crazy. He had like 75 surgeries, like just telling his story. He's in like triathlons and stuff, so it's still fitness related. But no, I thought about calling it like the Jeremy Running Podcast or something, but I was like, I don't want to limit it to just running because it's like if I'm interested in talking to somebody, why not? I want to just talk to him.
Yeah,
it doesn't have to be centered around something. Okay, so Twitter phone calls, converted into podcasts.
Yes.
Who was your very first podcast guest?
Tej Dosa, who also is my most recent podcast at the time of this recording as well.
And you've done over 400 episodes.
Yes.
And did you start that? So it was like 4 years ago? It was like 2020?
3.5 years ago, yeah. September 2020 was the first episode.
So many episodes.
When you love it, it's easy to do, right?
Yeah.
It's like, dude, you've done so many runs. It's like, yeah, I have. But like, it didn't feel like a lot, right?
Do you remember that first episode from 3.5 years ago?
Yeah, I remember it feeling different. Like, oh, this is what I was put here to do in this moment.
Really?
Yeah, it was like I was like, that was amazing. Let me do it again. And then I recorded 20 episodes in the span of 30 days.
Whoa.
I was just fully committed to it. I loved it so much. I loved learning about people. I felt like this is really important for me to do. So,
did you listen to a lot of podcasts before doing yours?
Somewhat, but not really. And I didn't want me to do the podcast because I thought Joe Rogan did the podcast. And I saw Joe Rogan do it and I want to be like Joe Rogan, so I'm going to start doing it. I like Joe Rogan. I like Tim Ferriss, but I didn't want to start it with the idea of like, I want to be them.
Right.
Because I felt like if it was coming from that foundation, I was going to stop doing it.
Yeah. Because you're not doing it because you want to do it. You want to do it because you want to be like somebody else that's doing it.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah. Were you nervous for those first few episodes?
No, I don't think I was. It was also audio only. And it was like phone calls since I was doing phone calls.
Oh, yeah.
So I pulled up Skype, audio only, cameras off. And that made it feel really comfortable for me.
Interesting. What was there like a learning curve to how to be a conversationalist, how to ask the right questions? Or did it feel kind of innate?
Both. It's like there is a learning curve.
Yeah.
And if you listen to the first few episodes and the first 100 episodes or 200 episodes, you'll be like, that guy is speaking differently. But there was also part of me that was like, feels natural.
Yeah.
So I think it's both. Like for your first runs, how did you feel?
Terrible.
Yeah. But did some part of you say like, oh, I could see myself getting good at this?
Yeah. And I think you kind of naturally gravitate towards things that you are good at. And I think some people generally kind of know the things that they tend to be better at and then lean into those. So like, have you always been good, do you feel like, at having conversations?
That's an interesting question.
Like as a kid in high school, middle school. with friends or strangers and like out in public, would you be able to just like hold a good conversation with him?
No.
Really?
How good I am at conversations is directly related to how good I am at being comfortable in my own skin or having the conversation with myself.
Interesting.
The more comfortable I've gotten with me, the more comfortable I've gotten with people.
That's so true.
Yes.
That's so true.
So what can we do to better get comfortable with ourselves? For me, it's meditation. For me, it's understanding myself deeper.
Yeah.
For me, it is uncovering the places in which I'm not free. That's how you get more comfortable with yourself. If you're willing to acknowledge that you got shoved into a locker senior year of high school, then it's like, okay, like I can acknowledge that versus stashing that away in the corner of some part of my mind, hoping that no one would bring that up on a podcast.
Did you get stuffed into a locker in high school?
Yeah, I did.
What was that like?
Oh my God, dude. So there was a Twitter account in high school that was basically posting gossip and drama and memes that were hilarious. Some of them were funny, some of them were mean, and some people, everybody in the school, 1,600 people, it felt like, thought that this anonymous Twitter account was me. And I knew it wasn't me. So how do you prove that something's not you? You prove that it's someone else. I proved it was someone else. I was like, look, this account tweeted at the same time as this account. The topics are similar. And it was undeniable that it was this person.
Yeah.
The person found out after I told the school that it was this person, and he shoved me into a locker.
What?
And when I start meditating for 60 minutes a day, within 7 days, the situation comes up. And I start laughing to myself like, oh my God, this situation has been in my mind for the last 7 years of my life. And I just shoved it away. And then I start laughing, and then I start forgiving myself for holding on to it, this guy for shoving me into the locker, and the whole situation as a whole for understanding that I couldn't have done anything differently based on my awareness at the time. And so the whole thing really helped me evolve and grow through it and be okay. Because not only did I acknowledge what happened, I also forgave, which I think is a very important part, where if you have additional awareness of a situation that happened, okay, but do you truly feel like if you stopped this person at a grocery store or just ran into them, that it would be a clean slate and you could start from zero? If you don't feel that way, you haven't fully forgiven them. And I fully forgave that person. I fully forgave myself. And thus, I felt more free. Thus, I felt more comfortable in my body, mind, and spirit.
Are there other things you've had to do that with?
I think it's yes. And it's a never-ending process. Because as you feel more freedom, you will inevitably brush up against some part of your being that you don't want other people to know or something and it will, as you feel more freedom, you also feel more activations in some way.
Right. Do you feel like you get to a point where there's nothing left to brush up against and it's just like purity, essentially?
I'm sure Eckhart Tolle is at that place. I'm sure Michael Singer from the Surrender Experiment is at that place.
What is the Surrender Experiment?
Oh my God.
Blow my mind.
Oh my God. Dude.
Michael Singer. I don't know who that is. I've heard that name, but I don't know.
Yeah. I'm buying that book for you, and it's showing up at your doorstep in the next 2 days.
Okay.
The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer is probably my most gifted book of all time. Mm-hmm. This guy said when he was 20 years old, I'm going to go meditate in the woods and surrender to the flow of life. By the time he is 60 years old, he's 100 millionaire or billionaire running WebMD, and the whole time he's meditating in the woods, surrendering to the flow of life. And that's his journey. And that journey of surrendering to what is and deepening your awareness and becoming more and more free by virtue of being in the world is the practice that I'm living right now. And if you actually live that practice, magical things start to happen. Like Video King Pablo meets this Uber driver. Like magic. And so, the basic idea of it is like life knows better than you. And you are getting in the way of life with your stories, with your limitations, with your insecurities. And there are parts of So when I say like Michael Singer is there, I actually think like maybe he's continuing that process or because he's talking about him getting sued in the book. And it's like he has X millions of dollars and now he has a new situation where his reputation is on the line. And I think the purpose of life is to help us become more free. And so we will always find situations that expand our ability to become free. And that's why we're here.
Yeah. Purpose of life is to be free. How do you define freedom? How do you know maybe can you reach like peak freedom, you think? Of your spirit or your soul maybe?
Yeah. I think peak freedom is just asking yourself, are the situations that I'm dealing with right now, would I be able to deal with these situations a year ago or 5 years ago? Like imagine you running this podcast 5 years ago.
No chance.
No chance. You weren't free to do that. Now imagine 5 years from now when Joe Rogan is interviewing you. It's like, could you imagine you doing that actually today?
No chance.
You can't imagine that today. But it's 5 years from now,
right.
God willing, that will happen.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what life is. Like a deepening and deepening of more places, more situations, more things that you can experience so that you can be more free. And more free is just your ability to hold more things and more situations with additional levels of peace.
How do you think you can expand that ability to hold more things?
I think you expand it by being comfortable with what is in this moment. And then life will give you another circumstance. If you are repeating the same pattern from boyfriend or girlfriend to girlfriend, same situation over and over and over and over again, then you are not free in that way of being. Because once you get comfortable with it, once you get comfortable with the pattern that you're repeating and saying, yeah, like I do acknowledge that whenever someone starts loving me, I start pulling away. When you acknowledge that, then you gain the ability to be put in another situation that allows you to be more free. Do you follow?
Yeah, I think so.
Do you see examples of that in your own life?
Your thinking is so abstract. I love it. It makes me think like, oh my gosh. Do you read Jordan Peterson at all?
I have, yeah.
It kind of reminds me of Jordan Peterson thinking. It's like, it's so unique. And it's like, I just haven't thought of things in this way before.
So
it's so cool.
I would love to, and I appreciate the comparison to Jordan Peterson because he's a great thinker. And I'm curious to hear in your own life when you have come to a new conclusion or realization after you had been repeating a pattern over and over again, what happened in your life?
Oh man. Hey, I'm the one hosting this podcast.
Like, I don't want to answer your question, man.
I don't know.
Like, for example, before you started posting on social media.
Yeah.
That's a clear one that might be easier to grasp.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's, I feel like the easiest thing I could think of is just like bad habits of like, I mean, that's what a cycle, just repeating the same cycle of something like I used to have to eat sweets at night after dinner. It's like this terrible habit. I was aware of it. And I was like, maybe that's, the first step is like, wow, maybe I shouldn't be eating all this cake and cookies and ice cream right after I eat dinner so I can go to sleep. And breaking that cycle potentially. I don't know if that's even a good answer to that question.
Well, so it's like, okay, what happened when you broke that cycle of eating those sweets at the end of the night?
Yeah.
What happened? Like, were you like, okay, like this related to some situation? Like, could you put yourself back in that?
I think I just liked ice cream too much. And I was like, man, if I don't want to look like a schlub, I should probably stop eating ice cream every night and feeling like crap all the time.
Right. So that's a new realization you made,
right? Which
allowed you to open up to a new reality,
right?
Which gave you more freedom in the decision now to either eat the ice cream or not.
Yeah.
But before you had made that realization, you were just living in the reality of like, I need to eat this ice cream to be okay.
Yeah.
And you made a new realization, which opened you up to a new reality of potential freedom, which then allowed you to say, I can eat the ice cream or I don't have to. Because now I have a new understanding of myself.
Right. Dude, this is good stuff. So you've done over 400 podcast episodes.
Yeah.
Have you ever bombed a podcast? Like you have a guest on and afterwards you're like, man, I totally blew that.
Okay, so I'm so happy you asked this because it relates to what we were talking about before. So episode 378 was with Peter Crone. Are you familiar with the guy Peter Crone?
I've heard that name.
So Peter Crone is a mental performance coach, and he is somebody who I really admired at the time that I was recording a podcast with him. It was actually directly before recording with Alex Hormozi. So I recorded with Peter Crone, and I felt like, wow, I really bombed that. Like I looked up to him so much, and when you interview somebody you really admire, it could be like, oh my God, what is this person going to think of me? And so all those stories were in my head. And I wasn't really aware. I was aware that I was nervous, but I wasn't aware why. A month later or 2 months later, I'm talking to my friend, L Beecher, twitter.com/L Beecher on Twitter. Amazing lady. And we were talking about like putting people on pedestals and where that comes from. And I realized in that moment, I was putting Peter Crone on a pedestal. Why was I putting Peter Crone on the pedestal? I was putting Peter Crone on the pedestal because I wanted to feel the emotional intelligence and feeling like an emotionally intelligent father figure in my life was guiding me. That's what I longed for. That's what I wanted as a child. And I realized that and I was like, oh my God, that's why I was nervous. Because I wanted this person to fill this void in me. And this person can't fill that void in me. Only I could fill the void in me.
Yeah.
And so when I made the realization, when there were opportunities in the future for me to interview people who could fulfill the same role, I was at peace with the situation and I didn't think twice about it. And so you could say I bombed that podcast, or you could say you took a very important lesson that helped transform your relationship with yourself. And that's how I choose to view it.
Do you think objectively you bombed it, or it didn't go the way you wanted it to go?
I think people who are aware could feel that he pulled back because of my excitement to talk to him.
Oh, so you were too excited, you think? Like,
yeah.
Interesting.
Like too excited to...
Was it a virtual podcast?
Yeah, it was virtual. But the interesting thing is, after that podcast, directly after, I talked to Alex Hormozi, and I was more free from talking to Peter Crone. I was more comfortable in my body, mind, and spirit. So it's funny how it just plays out, like just from a time perspective. It's like part of the reason why I was comfortable with myself was because I had talked to Peter Crone, and he is such a free individual. And I genuinely think the freedom that we have transfers over from person to person. So like if you talk to somebody who is very free and feeling very comfortable in their body and mind, you might start to be like, oh, I feel comfortable in my body. If this person's comfortable, what do I need to judge myself for? Right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's contagious.
Yeah.
We talked about this on your podcast too, just how energy, like it's this thing that you can't necessarily see, but you can definitely feel it. And it's more of a feeling, I think, than something you can see. But yeah, it's interesting.
I've devoted my life to increasing my own energy now.
How do you do that?
Meditating.
Meditating.
And figuring out the places where I'm not free. You know, you meditate, you feel different. Something changes in your own energy, in your own being, and your ability to sit with the present moment.
Do you meditate every day?
Yes.
How long is each session? It
depends. This morning I meditated for 40 minutes. And at night sometimes when I go to sleep, it's like it could be a 20-minute session, and it's all different times, and I don't have a strict schedule with it at this current moment, but when I was just getting started, it was very helpful to have, and also to not judge myself when I was just getting started. If someone's listening to this and they want to start meditating, they don't know how to, it's like, make it as easy as possible for you to meditate. Like, get out of bed, do it first thing in the morning, kitchen timer, put your back against the wall, or go sit on a couch, put a blanket over you, and just close your eyes. That's what I do. It's not complicated. It's not difficult, and it's not like you might not feel like you're increased in energy that day, but it's similar to going to the gym. And you have to realize that over a long enough time horizon, you will be a different person. It is actually impossible for somebody to be the same person who meditates every day for a year, similar to it's impossible for you to run every day for a year and be like, I'm the same person. I don't believe that. I genuinely, from the bottom of my heart, do not believe that. Like, you can control that. If you do that and you change your life that way, like, you will not accept the same things for yourself. You might not accept the job you're in. You might not accept the people who are in your life. Might not accept your relationship, and that's scary. And that there's a comfortability in the kind of middle area gray that people sometimes live in of like, this isn't that bad, but this also isn't that great. And so like, let me just accept that because it's comfortable. But I'm telling you, it is possible to be in joy every moment of your life. I know because I'm living it. I'm genuinely living it. There is not a moment from the time I wake up, from the time I go to sleep, where I am not just feeling absolute peace and love. And I stand for that for every human being. I genuinely do.
Do you equate joy, peace, and love with happiness? Or are those two different things?
It's a great question. I would say so. I would say joy, peace, and love is happiness. Yeah.
So,
would you?
I don't know. I don't know if I would, honestly.
Okay, let's hear it.
Like, do you think that takes away the humanness if you don't feel sadness? Because I would say if you're always happy, that means you can't be sad, right?
No.
You don't think so?
No, you can absolutely feel sad. You can absolutely work through grief, fear, anger. If you'd like, you have the freedom to explore that. It's not like you're removing that because you're like, those are bad things. No, it's not that. It's like when those things come, amazing. Let's look forward to them. Let's see them. Let's have them with open arms. So yeah, that's kind of my take on it.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I think, would you say that happiness and sadness are antonyms?
Oh, dude, these are such good questions. See, you're a professional podcaster.
I mean, I'm just love where we're going with this.
Yeah.
Just flowing.
Yeah. Yeah, you're such a present human being who's like so tapped in. Like
I try to be.
You really are.
But at the same time, I don't really have to try.
Yeah.
It's probably the same thing as you. Is like, you make intentions, but like it just comes out naturally.
Yeah. It's really cool to witness because you really have it. Really have the skill to be present and skill to do this. So just want to call that out.
It's skills are learned, I think. And yeah, you can acquire skills. I think there are intangible things potentially that each individual person has, but for the most part, I think you can kind of learn how to do anything.
It's a great belief to have.
Yeah, because I think if you go through life like, oh, I'm not a good runner or I'm not a good speaker, you just have this thing in your head subconsciously telling yourself, oh, I shouldn't go try to be a public speaker because I've never been a good speaker. It's like, you can learn anything.
Yeah.
You might not be able to learn how to be like, I don't know, a world record marathon runner or something, but you could probably learn how to run a fast enough marathon for whatever you really want to do. I don't know.
Yeah.
It gets weird with physical endeavors, I guess, but with speaking and stuff. Yeah.
But I think
anyways,
on that point, and we'll get to happiness versus sadness, I feel like I've surprised myself so much with running because I've put in my head like, oh, I'm not an athlete or I'm not a good athlete. I'm not a good runner. It's like, yeah, but I remember being in San Diego, breaking a 6-minute mile and just being like, I never thought I could do that. Yeah. And I know for you, obviously that's like, chump change. But for me at the time, for thinking that I wasn't a runner, breaking 6 minutes was like, oh my God. Like, this is impressive for me because this is above the standard that I set for myself.
5 years ago, sub 6 would have been crazy for me too.
There you go.
It's all relative.
It's all relative. And that's the thing. It's like we sometimes put ourselves down before we even get started as a way to allow ourselves not to have responsibility for something.
Yeah. Do you read a lot of, actually, before I ask this question, happiness versus sadness?
Yes.
Do you think they're opposites of each other? Because again, you said you feel like you could feel joy / happiness at all moments of the day. So does that mean that you never feel sad?
No, because I think I just work and process through sadness in a way that makes me feel happy. If you know that sadness leads to, or anger leads to joy, then of course you're going to welcome it. Because you're like, okay, this thing that I did upset you. It's like amazing. Like now I have more information and knowledge of how I'm showing up in the world. I'm not going to be upset that you're upset at me for this reason. It's like, that doesn't serve me. And that doesn't serve you. So.
Do you read a lot of self-help books or like self-improvement or maybe philosophical things? Like, how did you get your brain to think in this way? Is it through the like 400 plus podcast episodes and talking to all these different individuals?
Yeah. Yeah, my brain right now is just an amalgamation of everything that I've experienced up to this point.
Yeah.
And that includes a lot of reading. You know, part of 75 Hard is like reading 10 pages a day.
Right.
And it's like, I've probably read 10 pages a day for the last, 1,000 days. I mean, obviously there are some days where I don't read at all. There's some days I read more, whatever. And it's like, I've also talked to 400 plus of the most brilliant people in the world that I can get my hands on. It's like, of course my brain is going to think in a unique way. Like It's impossible for it not to. And that opportunity is available for you and for everyone. It's like, just read, test your body and mind, and talk to interesting people. And your mind will also think in a way that is unique in some way, because who else has spoken to the people that I've spoken to? It's like no one has actually done all of the interviews that I've done.
Yeah.
So.
In the order that you've done them in and had the same conversations.
Right.
Yeah. I think we talked about that on your podcast too, is like, we're all, going through life, point A to point B on the same path, but that path can look 8 billion different ways because of, even as like a twin, like if you had a twin sibling or something, like you have the same DNA, but you can take 2 totally different paths through life. That's so interesting.
And that idea made me think more about the power of free will.
Yeah. Because
if they have the same DNA and they look different, they look the same at 20, but they can look different at 60. It's like, okay, that gives you that window of why your actions are important and how you can actually change your reality and why it's important for you to take steps that you believe are leading more towards the light.
Yeah. I love it, dude. What are some of your favorite books you've read, or what would you recommend to people?
Surrender Experiment.
Okay.
Maps of Consciousness Explained by David Hawkins.
That sounds interesting.
Yeah, that I tweeted about that one and I put that on my Instagram story yesterday, and that's been the most impactful book I've read in the last year because it helps put vibes to emotions. So imagine if there was a world in which you knew that one emotion equaled a certain number on a scale.
You like quantify it.
You've quantified it.
Yeah.
And so when I know that courage hits a 200 and love is 500, and you look at the scale that, search up on Google right now, David Hawkins Map of Consciousness. And if you actually just look at that chart and internalize it, I don't think your reality can be the same. Because you see the ways in which people are acting. And you see if someone's acting in anger, that is below courage. And if you see someone's acting in willingness, that's above courage. And if you see somebody acting in love or joy, that's above reason. And so when I understood this chart and really internalized it, it changed everything for me. And the book, Maps of Consciousness Explained by David Hawkins, helped make it so clear for me. And so I highly recommend it. So that's one of my favorites. And A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle.
I've heard of this one, yeah. I've never read it.
Yeah. It is such a brilliant insight into what is actually going on at the deepest levels. So A New Earth, Maps of Consciousness Explained, The Surrender Experiment. It's like that. You might understand some of the things I'm saying deeper if you have read those three books. Yeah. Because often when we compliment someone's brain, or when we're like, why is this guy thinking so interestingly or whatever? It's like, we just don't know the sources that somebody has pulled in to make this a reality. So those three books will help bring some of the things that I'm talking about more to life.
Have you talked to anybody on your podcast where you have this reaction to them where you're like, how are you thinking like this? Like, it's just so unique. Have you had any reactions like that out of the 400 plus people?
Yeah. I know when I first started talking to my friend Tej Dosa, that's exactly how I felt. Where I was like, this guy, he's just speaking about business and making money, but he's doing it with love. How does that work? How did he get to that place of being so comfortable with himself and so comfortable with how he's expressing these ideas about love, and what is going on? So Tej Dosa at Comedic Bisman on Twitter, just such a brilliant guy, and really had me feeling like that from the start. And it made me just so attracted to, what did he do? And I found out he'd been meditating for 10 years before all of this began. It's like, yeah, that will create some interesting insights that draw you in.
So will you put a blanket over yourself when you meditate? What's the purpose of that?
So I guess I should have explained it more clearly. The blanket is just over my body.
Oh, okay.
And you can use an eye mask if you'd like.
I think I thought I saw a video where you had it over your head too.
No.
Maybe just over your body. Okay.
Yeah. Just over my body. I was wearing a brown sweatshirt in the video.
Maybe it blended it.
Yeah, it blended it. I love that. And yeah, it's just so you can like feel comfortable.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Have you ever used one of those weighted blankets?
No.
Those are crazy.
Yeah.
There's a sense of like security when you just have this like 10-pound blanket on you. It's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I'm all for making it more comfortable and making your experience more comfortable, because the more comfortable it is, the more likely you are to keep doing it.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's a reason why somebody who's running easy runs, I think most people stop running because they feel like, oh, I just have to go hard every day.
Yeah.
It's like, no, you don't. What if you were to do it easy? You'd do it more often and you'd be happier doing it and you'd get better results, it turns out.
Yeah.
Isn't that funny?
Do you do guided meditations, or is it all on your own, or what's that process like?
Yeah, it's typically on my own. I feel like the most pure version of what comes up is an unguided meditation. So
I know there's a million different types of meditation. Like I know there's obviously, the guided ones where it asks you to think about a specific thing, or, think about your body or whatever. And I know there's some where I think it's maybe more of the Buddhist style, where you basically try to think of nothing, which is nearly impossible. Like what do you think about certain things, or do you like set some sort of intention? What does that look like?
Yeah, it's just open awareness, meaning whatever arises. And that's what's supposed to come up in that session.
And then do you focus on whatever that thing is?
Not intentionally. Sometimes I will get wrapped up in the story of like, oh, I've got this big podcast today. I got to prepare. I got to do this. And sometimes I'll be like, I have this big podcast today. And then it just drops. And sometimes don't even think about the podcast that I'm doing that day. So like it's very wide in the sense of what I can think about. And I don't get mad at myself for thinking about something. I just think about something. And then sometimes I have periods of just thinking about nothing that is so peaceful and so zen-like, and so you're like, oh my God. When you come back, you're like, wow, where was I?
I feel like when you get into that type of, it's like a flow state almost, a meditation, where it's almost like a psychedelic or like out of body type of experience. Do you feel that too? Yeah.
And also that happens, but it's not necessarily the majority of my own experience. And so I could tell you about these experiences that I've had that are, it's transcended, and I felt the energy through my body. And it's like, yeah, but like if you're just getting started in your first year, just focus on sitting down 20 minutes with your eyes closed and just do that every day. And don't think about any of the amazing experiences you could have, or just no pressure, no anything, just be for 20 minutes, because we know our attention is valuable. We know our attention is valuable because Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk have platforms that are designed to keep you on them. So if they know your attention is valuable and you have some idea that your attention is valuable, how come you're not directing that attention to yourself? It is the ultimate question.
That's $1 million question.
And it's like, what might open up for you if you did, just for 20 minutes a day? Yeah. I know you've got 20 minutes if you're listening to this podcast. I know you have it. And you become a different person by virtue of you doing that. And you change your state. You change the things around you. You become more aware.
Yeah.
And it's the greatest practice that I've ever uncovered to discover the deepest truths about yourself.
I love that. Have you found anything else that comes close to replicating that awareness or that presence?
I think being in the presence of somebody who has it allows you to tap into it.
Yeah.
A really, really, really great therapist who you get to spend every day with. It's like, I've got these friends, Elle and Talia, that are the world's best coaches, the world's best therapists. And we just play with each other's places we're not free. And you become expanded by virtue of this process. But how did I even get able to be in the room with them? Just because I was that person myself. And I was uncovering the places I wasn't free. And I was willing to look. And I was willing to ask myself those questions. And then it's easy for me to ask someone else those questions. So,
what are those places where you're still not free, you feel like?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I feel like right now it is in romantic relationships, in the sense of talking about them and being comfortable with anybody knowing about things going on romantically with me. Right now, I feel like I've had in my head before about Joe Rogan and how he treats his wife, where it's like Rogan on, there's like a cutoff for him not talking about his significant other.
Right.
Then there's like Gary Vaynerchuk for a long time didn't talk about his wife or post his wife at all. And I've grown up with these as role models and inspirations. So I'm kind of in this place right now of like, what is the appropriate thing for me to do about romantic relationships? And so I would say right now, publicly, that's a place I'm not free.
That's tricky. I know a really complex situation too is with kids. Like,
yes.
If you're a social media person, very outward facing to the world, and you have a kid, like, do you want to show your kid on social media? Post pictures and videos of them. It's like I don't know what the right answer is to either one of those situations. But yeah, what do you think would require you to become free of that hindrance?
I think right now it's just more clarity on the situations that I'm involved in and that is unfolding. And I think especially like in the beginning phases of something, you want to honor someone's privacy, and you also want to figure out exactly what it is before talking about it. So I think just more clarity on exactly what was happening and how it was happening, and more at peace with that myself.
Yeah. Damn. How does it feel to be, actually, better question would be, what do you think the kids in high school, like that kid that shoved you into the locker?
Yeah.
What do you think that kid thinks of Danny Miranda now?
I don't know. I don't know if he had anything against me in particular. I think just that he had something against himself, that he was judging people and wasn't owning that judgment of people, or didn't want people to know he was judging others.
Just like the product of those circumstances, I guess, more than anything.
Yeah, he wasn't actually mad at me. He was mad at the situation that he found himself in.
Yeah.
And I was just the reason. I was something that he could externally use as anger or fuel for him to get upset, but it was just because he hadn't looked at something in himself.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if he feels I don't know if he felt anything about me in particular. And if he did, great. And if he thinks anything about me now, great. It's not for me.
Yeah.
But I just think that I think people are all working on their own stuff to the best of their abilities.
Yeah. I think one of the most powerful realizations I've had is I think everybody thinks everybody's thinking about them. And in reality, everybody's thinking the same thing. So everybody's just focused on themselves.
Yeah.
And really nobody is paying that much attention to anybody else because we're all too worried about what other people are thinking about us. It's this weird, like, ironic situation.
Yes. And also, when you get to be in the position of you're good with you, you start thinking about others from the direction of how can I help this person?
Right.
And how can I make this person's day a little brighter because I'm feeling good? So it literally could just be you operating in love, in a state of peace that allows somebody else to feel, oh, wow, there's hope there, there's potential. Or it could be asking them a question about them, or it could be giving them a gift in some way. All of those open up for you if you're comfortable with you and you're not thinking about, what is this person judging me for? What is this person? It's like, okay, but I'm good with me. So if you're judging me, I still love you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like to give 100%, you got to be 100% with yourself. You can't pour from an empty cup. All these adages.
That are real.
Yeah. Very real.
That are real if you live them.
Yeah. Yeah. Out of all of your podcast guests, I know you can't just pick one favorite, but if you had to pick one favorite, or like one episode where you're like, man, this is why I do this. Have you had any of those?
Dude, so I used to give a non-answer to this question, and episode 441 with Mike Posner had me feeling that way.
That's pretty recent.
Yes. And for so many reasons, personally, and because it was an amazing episode. One is because I gave you the example of Peter Cronin, putting him on a pedestal and wanting him to be the emotional father figure for me, and then making that realization. Mike Posner was the first time where I'd made that realization and realized that I didn't need him to fill that void.
Oh, wow.
And he could have filled that void for me, and I could have made it about looking up to him, but I didn't, because that wasn't how I felt in that moment, because I'd grown past that. And it allowed me the freedom to truly express my love for him in a way that wasn't, I need love from you to feel okay, which was the energy that happened when I was with Peter Crone. Yeah. So the episode with Mike Posner was so amazing because I was depressed in August of 2019 when I was just figuring it out. And I was like, this before I started meditating, and after I started meditating a little and stopped meditating, I would listen to Mike Posner's album, Keep Going, over and over and over again. And then I could tell him in November of 2023, hey, dude, you changed my life. And coming from the pure place of truth. And he really felt that. And it really was a beautiful 2-hour conversation because of that. And that's
awesome.
And the interesting part is he gave me this song called The Blessing by Carrie Job and Cody Carnes. And I basically asked him to start the podcast, hey, your music's changed my life. What's been music that's changed your life, basically? And he said, The Blessing. And I have played The Blessing every day since he told me that. And my life in the last 3 months is nothing short of a movie. Like, really? Just in the level of joy and peace that I feel and what happens in the situations that unfold. And I attribute a lot of that growth to receiving the blessing from Mike Posner, who helped get me from the start to this moment. So
I'm gonna have to listen to this song.
Yeah, it's an amazing song.
Who's it by?
Cody Carnes and Carrie Job.
Is this a newer song, or is it like an older, like 80s something?
No, it's newer in that it's 2020, I think it came out, and it has 101 million views on YouTube.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. I'm excited to listen to this afterwards.
Yeah.
Dude, I need like a little producer, like on Rogan, where he's got Jamie. We could just be listening to it right now. Someday. We'll get there. Yes. Damn, Mike Posner. How did you get connected with him? Like, I mean, he's a really well-known guy. I'm sure very sought after.
Yeah. So 2 different people at the same time introduced us.
Oh, wow.
So if you want to talk about God planting that moment in, like, this is going to happen. I had one listener to the podcast and one previous guest, both in the same week, was like, yo, Mike and Danny, you guys got to connect.
Damn. That's cool.
If that's not God, I didn't choose to make that happen.
That's amazing. Do you guys ever talk now?
Yeah, he's a great guy. I felt instantly connected. We both felt instantly connected. Like, awesome. Oh, this is a brother.
Is he out in LA or is he in Austin?
I think he's in LA, okay. And he's been to Austin before, but.
And that was an in-person episode, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's actually, I'm very curious. You've done so many episodes. I know a lot of them virtually. How do you feel like they differ, virtual versus in-person episodes?
Yeah. It's in person, you just get the energy so much clearer, and you could feel the vibe of somebody. Yeah. Online's great because you can have more guests and the guest selection, but I think that in person is undefeated. Like, it's so much better, and this is such a beautiful experience, and this would be so different if this was online.
Totally
this episode itself.
Yeah. It's so much more of an interview, when less of a conversation when it's virtual.
Can be. Yeah.
Yeah. So I know you were like known as the deep dive podcast guy
Research.
for a while. And recently you haven't been doing that as much.
Yes.
What is the reasoning for pulling back from that when like that kind of became what you were known for? Like, and do you think that was maybe how you got some of these big guests on, was like, oh, this guy's going to do his research, we're gonna have a great conversation, instead of this like very surface level?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a huge transition in my life, because I was known as the research guy who could go so deep on somebody. But the truth is, some part of that, some very small part of that, was I am doing this research so that you will like me. And it's like, you make that realization, it's hard to go back.
Yeah.
And yeah, I did enjoy the research, and I do enjoy doing research on people. And still, I feel like the truth of what I am is deeper than the research. And the truth of freedom is more important for me to get across than what happened when you were this age.
Yeah. What started that initial, like, okay, I'm going to do as much research as possible? Because I'll say from my experience with the podcast, I have all these curiosities about you. Like, I maybe prepped for 20 minutes last night for this.
Good.
Like, not much, like
Good.
just enough to know some things, and then let it all come out on the podcast. Like, what made that decision of, okay, instead of trying to learn everything on the podcast, like having, like, like in that moment, like, okay, I want to be the research guy.
Yeah, it was part my just way of being with people. Like, I got this from my dad, which I love, is like, I tell my dad a person's name, he'll know everything there is to know about the person by Google and all this stuff. Like, he's just tapped in. And I have that as well, where I'm just curious about people and curious about their backstory and origin. And so it fit very well with who I am at a deep level. And it also just, because it was coming from the energy of, I want you to like me, it didn't feel right to me. And it was easy for me to release it, because it wasn't, I didn't feel like it was about, I was coming from the 100% pure place.
Right. How many episodes did you do with that style?
400.
So it's like been a recent thing.
Yeah.
To transition away.
Yeah.
How do you feel like the podcast has changed? Has it changed, you think?
Yeah. I think I have less focus and energy directed towards the podcast, and more focus and energy directed towards coaching and retreats. And the reason for that is because I'm getting deeper levels of truth when I'm doing coaching with people than I am on the podcast. It's difficult when you ask somebody a personal question for that person, if they haven't processed it, to talk about it. Yeah. For example, if this is a coaching call and I'm talking to you about the lack of freedom I feel in romantic relationships, we'll break down that scenario and be like, what is it exactly? What's going on? Where did that come from? Versus the answer that I just gave you on this podcast was, well, romantic relationships are a place I'm not free, and yeah, I'm working on it. And it's like, okay, but what does the working on it mean? Working on it is actually talking to somebody about it with the specific examples of the people and how that is manifesting. And so it's going deeper. And when I experienced that in a coaching session where people are telling me situations that unfold with them that they've never told anybody in their entire life. And so how do I see that? How do I feel that? And then be like, let me go to a lesser version of truth? I just can't do it. And I can do it. The truth is, I can do it, and I can talk to people on the podcast, and I do enjoy the process, but I enjoy it even deeper when we can get to deeper levels of truth.
Yeah. So do you feel like maybe on the podcast that like there's a filter almost?
There can be.
That prevent people from opening up too much because they know it's going to be public. And because, I mean, in a way, like we talked about this after years, it was like, it felt like a therapy session. Podcasts are really therapy. Like, you're just back and forth and probing somebody about very personal things. But do you feel like that's maybe why you like the coaching more? Because there isn't that filter from the podcast?
Yeah, because people know that there's no one watching this.
Yeah. This
is just for your gain and my gain to help you in some way. Like, there's no anything there. It's clean. It's a cleaner exchange versus if it's going out to 1,000, 2,000, 10,000 people, it's like, okay, now all of those people have perspectives, and I love that. And also, maybe people aren't comfortable going into the places they're not free to 1,000 to 10,000 people.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's fair.
Did you study like psychology or communications or anything like this in school?
No, I wish I did. That's a regret of mine, quote unquote, is like, I would have loved to study psychology.
What did you study? Did you go to college?
Yeah, well, I went to college and I studied political science.
Hey, me too.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, political science is very philosophical, though. It's
It
obviously
is.
through the lens of politics and government. But I mean, I still remember to this day some of my political science classes. Like, I still think about a lot of those things from those days.
Yeah.
Was your plan to go to law school?
No, I watched House of Cards and I was like, it's like, I want to do political science. So
Interesting.
that
What
was-
was it like the drop shipping that took over that prevented you from going that road?
yeah, it was just like I wanted to make money on my own and I didn't really see a path. By the time I graduated, I was like, I don't really care about House of Cards or politics, and like this was just a phase in my life.
Yeah. Do you ever think about politics now?
No.
It's so negative.
Yeah, it's
And there's
low vibration.
And yeah, that's a good way to put it. And there's just not a lot that we can really do about it, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I really appreciate what Marianne Williamson has done. Marianne Williamson wrote this great book. I think it's called A Return to Love, or I think that's the name of it. It's a red cover. It was really good. I read it during COVID. And she started running for office and she started wanting to affect change. She's a spiritual woman, but she's like, spiritual people always say that, you know, politics is above them and it's not important. And she's actually taken matters into her own hands and been like, no, I'm running for office. Like, I'm actually trying to institute change. And I appreciated that because it was just a novel perspective on politics is low vibration to like, okay, but like, what if you can actually make change?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Once money is involved, that becomes a very difficult task to do because people are so influenced and persuaded by money, unfortunately. But very low vibration. That's the best way to put it. Dude, what is do you have a dream podcast guest, like somebody you've yet to talk to and you're like, wow, I really am just dying to talk to this person?
dream podcast guest right now is Michael Singer
Okay.
from the Surrender
Yeah,
Experiment and Eckhart Tolle.
What is Eckhart Tolle alive?
Yeah,
Okay. How is he older? I feel like
in his 70s.
okay. Do you know where either one of these guys live? Like what city?
Michael Singer lives in Florida, and he has a temple, something called the Temple of the Universe,
Oh wow.
where he speaks every week, and he's been doing it for I think 50 years. And I'm going this year.
Oh, you're going?
Yeah.
Have you met him in person before?
No.
What's preventing you from having both these guys on the podcast?
Nothing. Time. Just and it unfolding perfectly and the perfect story and the perfect situation. Like I feel like it will happen, both of those conversations. And I'm excited to just go deeper and deeper into that world.
Yeah. So you don't have a need of like, okay, I want to talk to him next week.
No.
Okay.
Never that.
What's your process of getting some of these people on? Because you have, again, some very big name people. I mean, Hormozy, Gary Vee,
Yeah.
Mike Posner.
Yeah.
I mean, the list goes on. Like, what's the process like to get some of these people? Because they got to be so hard to contact.
Yeah. Like Michael Singer, I just tweeted out. Basically what happened was two different people 2 weeks ago or last week, they sent me a message or a DM about Michael Singer. And this happened in the same hour. So I was like, all right, like that's a sign. So I tweeted out, does anyone know Michael Singer? Because I'd love to have him on the podcast and I've been deeply impacted by his work. And within an hour, somebody was like, oh, I'm actually friends with somebody he's friends with. Do you want me to reach out to them? And so, you know, I think that's how it works these days.
Yeah.
And I'm really grateful for people who listen to the podcast and support me and are just involved in the ecosystem. It very much feels like we are one person away from every person on the planet.
Right.
And that's a really interesting feeling.
Yeah, especially when you're in this kind of space. It's even more closely connected, I think.
Yeah.
In terms of like social media and content and self-improvement and fitness, and it is all kind of blended together, I feel like.
Yeah, we definitely exhibit or inhibit some of the same worlds.
Yeah.
And that's a really cool thing when it's like, oh, this Jeremy Miller guy, like he's been doing the same thing in his own world that is closely related to mine for quite some time. And you just meet some of these people and it's like, oh yeah, like we've been friends for a long time. We don't even realize it though. Right?
I love that.
Yeah.
So Twitter.
Yeah.
Like you're a big Twitter guy, it sounds like.
So I said I was a big Twitter guy, and then Matt Choi corrected me. He's like, "You're not a big Twitter guy. You're a big storytelling guy," and I like that, expanding the scope. But yeah,
so is Twitter? I mean, I'll be honest. I haven't been on Twitter. I deleted it in 2016 because my whole feed was just all politics,
right?
And I hated it,
right?
So I deleted Twitter. I've been on there for 8 years.
Wow, God bless. That's amazing. For if it's in politics and like you removed yourself from politics. I found Twitter is no politics. And that is because I mute all the politics words.
Okay. I was in this weird echo chamber.
Yeah.
Maybe I should start a new account from fresh.
Yeah.
Start from scratch.
Absolutely. I'll post this episode on Twitter if you want, and we can get you some followers if you'd like.
There we go. We'll see. What do you think the benefit of being on Twitter is as opposed to Instagram?
Yeah. I think that for me, I've always enjoyed reading as the medium, and I've enjoyed writing my whole life. And so Twitter is the platform that most resembles those things. And the ability to enter into any conversation in the world is the reason why I've gotten some of the guests that I've gotten. Because I could literally just tweet Israel Adesanya and be like, hey, you want to come on my podcast? And he could not respond, and he could see it.
Yeah.
Whereas if I were to do the same thing in his Instagram comments, he'd be less likely to see it, less likely to reply. And the ability to enter into any conversation to me is such an amazing idea that gets me so excited.
That's powerful.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, Twitter and the power of it, I mean, that's why Elon stepped in to save it, is because he just saw like how important it actually is to have this public discourse. I mean, it's like the global town square, essentially.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. Have you seen any like changes since he took over Twitter?
I think longer posts typically get more engagement. I know videos are getting prioritized more. Longer videos are really cool that you could have podcasts on Twitter where you never could before.
Yeah, they're really prioritizing the content creators, right?
Yes, and they started paying people. Like I got a check from Twitter for like $1,000 last year. Like,
interesting,
pretty solid.
Was that all from video content?
I'm not sure exactly how they divvy it up. They're not very open about that stuff, but it's cool, man. It's really cool seeing the ways in which it's changed and ways in which Twitter's changed, and I just love the fact that we have access to so many of the most brilliant minds on the planet, and Twitter is how you can access them.
Yeah. I mean, it's like reading their daily journal almost, if they use it in that way.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like a book, like you can really understand how somebody thinks, but Twitter's more of like, on a day-to-day basis, which is cool.
Yeah. And dude, it's like Elon Musk liked one of my tweets.
I saw that.
Like, it's like, what is that? In what other world is something that I'm writing getting it in front of Elon Musk?
Yeah.
It's like only on Twitter.
Yeah. Damn. I saw you lived in a cabin for 5 days.
Yes.
What is that all about?
You do your research.
I did some research. I felt like I will say I did more research than normal for this episode because I felt like I had to.
I love the honesty. You don't have to do any research. I still love you the same. But the cabin is great. This is why another reason why I started the podcast was I lived in a cabin 2 different times for 5 days. I brought 5 pounds of turkey, 5 pounds of rice, and that was all I ate. I meditated an hour in the morning, an hour in the evening. I brought probably 5 books that I wanted to read. And I just learned about my life and learned about who was I really. I brought old journal entries, and I just saw what came up.
When did you do this?
I did it once in August 2020 and once in August 2023.
What did you learn?
So you know that feeling you get when you're so clear on what you need to do, where it's just like, oh, it's so obvious. I'm going to start this podcast. I'm going to interview these guests. I'm going to do that. Whereas like a lot of times we're just operating this like, should I do this? Should I not? What I felt from going there to this cabin was complete clarity, complete knowing of my path, complete surrender to this is so clear. I mean, when I came back from the first time, I had 100 names of guests, of people I wanted to have on the podcast, people to reach out to. This is how I'm going to get this person. This is how I'm going to talk to this person. It was just like, oh, I see the plan.
Yeah. So
the surety of the vision from September 2020 and recording 20 episodes in 30 days is because in August, right before all that started, I planned it out. And I had a clear knowing of that this was the right and appropriate direction for me to go in.
Was that when you were doing 75 hard, like around that same time?
Yeah, I was doing 75 hard in September of 2019 for the first time.
Okay.
And then I did it throughout 2020 as well.
Okay.
To keep me sharp and keep me going.
Yeah. Did you do like, because after you do 75 hard, is it phase 1? Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Did you do all those iterations too?
Yes, I did. And it was just, it's great. Like part of it is like talking to a random stranger. Some part of it's like taking a cold shower every day.
Yeah.
Just like you do these small things, it really adds up to change your vibration, change who you are as a human being. I always felt so good talking to random strangers because maybe it was like an area where I felt uncomfortable or not free. And just the fact that I could talk to somebody random and I could light up a smile on their face and I could just connect with them in a deep way. To me, that's the magic of life.
Yeah.
Remembering who we are, connecting with somebody who is ourselves.
What causes somebody to go live in the woods for 5 days? Like, what was the moment where you're like, you know what? I'm going to look up a cabin and I'm going to find one that's vacant for 5 days and I'm going to get a bag of rice and turkey. Like, what causes somebody to do that?
I don't know, man. I don't know.
I think about it on a weekly basis, but I've never actually done it.
I think that's why it resonates with people because most people have thought about it, but just haven't done it. Like most people have thought about running the crazy feats that you've done, but never actually do it. And so you give them the possibility of like, yeah, like this could be your life.
Yeah.
I think I was meditating 60 minutes a day from May of 2020 to I ended up doing it until December. And I was like, I know I can go deeper on myself. I know I can do more. It's similar to like someone running a marathon being like, I know I can do more.
Yeah.
Like imagine just sitting with yourself for 60 minutes a day and it not being an issue at all. Like that face.
Yeah.
I hope that goes to your face. Dude, imagine that.
Yeah.
And like imagine being so comfortable with that where you're like, what's next? Give me something else.
Yeah.
And she's like, all right, I'll do 60 minutes in the morning and evening. And then it's like, okay, what's next?
Do you think everybody has that mindset
Yes.
though?
I think,
You
well,
think so?
no, I think everyone has that in them if they want it. Similar to everyone can run a marathon if they want it.
Right.
I don't think everyone has that mindset. And I think that's why people follow people like me and you. Because like, I don't have that mindset. I like some bit of that mindset.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. Damn. That's good. This is good stuff. So are you podcasting full time?
Yeah.
This is like sole source of income essentially?
Yeah. Well, it's coaching now.
Right.
It was consulting before where I was helping other podcasters grow their podcast, but now it's completely coaching and retreats.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And podcasting is so interesting because I've heard you talk about it before. I've seen the statistics of like, it's what, 90% quit before episode 10 or something.
Yeah.
And then it's like 90% of those that make it past, they quit before episode 20.
Yes.
You probably know the statistic better than I do, but
Yeah.
so it's like, essentially, if you make it past episode 20, you're in the top 1%.
Yes.
Is that still the case? Do you know? Like, I feel like everybody I know has a podcast.
Oh, well, everyone has a podcast that has started.
That's true.
Is everyone publishing a podcast?
That's true.
I don't know. I think that just numbers on human nature.
Yeah.
It's like same thing. I'm sure it's the same thing with running.
Yeah.
It's like, I feel like everyone's running. Well, yeah, because everyone you surround yourself with is running. It's like that type of person. But a lot of people have started running and they've done it for 7 times and they've never ran again.
Yeah, that's true.
Other people, they've gotten to 20 runs. And that's how I would track it when I started running, actually. I remember running with Matt Choi and being like, I'm on run 50 right now.
Really?
And we did an interview where I was on run 50. And I was like, wow, like this was in August of 2023.
And you just did a marathon, was it November?
I did a marathon, St. Jude's, December 2nd.
December, okay.
Yeah. And then I ran with Matt Choi and we did a marathon around the lake, unofficial, unsanctioned, December 31st. And then I'm running my 3rd marathon, I guess, on February 18th.
In 2 days.
In 2 days with you, potentially.
Dude, I think we should.
Yeah, I think that's what the moment calls for.
Yes. Oh, dude. What got you into running initially? So with Matt?
No, so Matt played some part in it, but really it was my grandpa and my dad. And my grandpa started running when he was 40 and it became a huge part of his life. He hosted a run club in the 70s or 80s and
Really?
just an amazing guy.
Before run clubs were cool.
Way before run clubs were cool. He would just show up to this park and he would do it 5 days a week.
That's so cool.
And it would just be, people would come in and So cool to just know that that's a part of my bloodline in some sense. But the reason why I started taking it seriously was because my friend Brett Ender from Meat Mafia.
Oh, yeah.
Great guy. And he calls me and he's like, hey, dude, you want to run the St. Jude's Marathon in Memphis in 6 months? It's like, yeah. But also like the fact that he would call me about that marathon specifically when my dad ran one marathon in his life and it was that one 10 years prior.
Really?
I said, I understand, God. I see what I'm being called to do in this moment and I surrender. And so I started running.
What
Seriously.
are the chances of that? That's wild.
That's God.
Yeah.
To me, that's what I call, I can't choose that circumstance.
Yeah.
10 years from the time where my dad signed up to the time where I run this marathon. Come on.
That's crazy.
Come on.
How did it go?
It was a transcendent experience.
The training or the race?
Both. And that's why I knew I loved it.
Yeah.
Because I loved the person I was becoming by virtue of the running and the training of it. And then I loved racing. And I loved bringing people together that I loved. Like I did it with my friend Zach Pograb. And I told you, we were in the hotel room listening to Jeremy Miller. What does Jeremy Miller say about the LMNT? How much electrolytes? How much salt? What do you eat before? And Zach is probably like a 210-pound guy. And here how much do you weigh?
I'm like 170.
170. And it's like, he's like, he's like, I need to add like a little extra for the unaccounted for.
Oh my God. That's so funny.
It was so great. But I love bringing people together for the marathon.
Yeah.
And my parents were there. His parents were there. And my friend Noah Heisman and Brett and Harry, they were all there. And it was so special just to have so many people I loved in one place in one time. And I was like, I love this so much. And within 3 hours, I was like, I'm signing up for another one. And actually, I got to put on record a remarkable story that happened at that race, since it all ties together. So mile 21, my grandpa told me before the race, he's like, dude, for you, mile 21 to 23 is going to be the most difficult part of the marathon. My grandpa's name is Richard, and he is just such a brilliant guy that I was like, okay, whatever you say, Grandpa, mile 21 will be the hardest. No one's talking to me during this Memphis marathon where I don't know anyone really that's running in the race except Zach, who's way faster than me. And mile 21 comes about, and this guy, it's like, hey, dude, do you need anything? Do you need any electrolytes? Do you need any water? He's running with a pack and he's running in the race. And I was like, nah, dude, I'm good. We start running together for the next 2 miles from 21 to 23. And the whole time I'm like, oh my God, like this is the time where my grandpa said was going to be the most difficult for me. And here this guy just starts running with me randomly. Before he goes, I say, yo, dude, what's your name? So I could get in contact with him after. And he goes, my name is Richard.
No way. What the hell? That's a real story?
That is a real story.
That's pretty nuts.
When I talk about my life as a movie, that's what I mean.
That's crazy. It's not crazy.
Is that crazy or is that God?
It's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really makes you think.
Yeah, it does.
It really makes you think.
Damn. That is wild. That's
Richard
so cool,
Mayberry.
though.
Real person. Real guy from Alabama.
That's so
real
cool.
legend, you know?
Damn.
And my grandpa, really named Richard.
What do you think there's like why do you think all these things are happening? Does it seem like more as of lately?
Yeah.
Why do you think so?
I think because I've become more free.
And more aware of them potentially?
Yeah, more aware of them. I think it's always happening to some extent. It's just about our ability to recognize them.
Yeah.
And I call them synchronicities. And
yeah,
the only way I could describe it is like, there's got to be something greater that is running the show to make that happen. I mean, the guy could have started running with me at mile 15.
Yeah.
I said it. This is also true. I was going to take my shirt off at mile 13, but I said, no, there's something about finishing and starting the race with the same shirt and what you become in that process. So I'm not going to take it off. And the reason why he approached me was because he was like, I like your shirt.
Dude, you couldn't write it any better.
When you experience this on a day-to-day basis, the only thing I'm left to say is God is running the show.
Yeah.
Truly. And this is coming from somebody who didn't believe in God at all. for years of my life, for 27 years. But if you just experience that and you continually deepen and deepen that experience of things that are so bizarre that you have to say it's God.
Was your family religious? Like, you
not at all.
Going to church or anything?
Not at all.
Dang. This is just pure firsthand experience.
Yes.
That's cool. That's the most pure way.
Yes.
Because it's so different if you grew up going to Sunday school your whole life. That's like a distorted perception potentially, because it's like you have that influence. But when you experience that outside of parental influence or family influences, and it's like you get it explored on your own, it's so much more powerful, I think.
Yeah, it really feels that way.
Yeah.
It feels deeper. Like my parents don't even understand it. They're like, what? God? Like, what are you talking about?
Wow.
And so
that's so cool.
Yeah, it's just, I wouldn't say this if it didn't impact my life at a deep level.
Yeah.
And you listen to the blessing over and over and over again, watch your life transform. Like, I genuinely believe nobody can listen to the blessing every day, 3 times a day, and not have their life be miraculously different. I genuinely believe that.
Damn, I gotta hear this song, dude.
I can't wait to listen to it with you.
So you ran, it was 3:39, right?
Yes.
For the marathon.
Yes.
Do you feel like you could have ran faster? Like, were you trying to run like a specific time? Or was it just like, I just want to finish this damn thing?
I didn't know how I ran it as hard as I could. I didn't know how it'd turn out. Dude, I feel like there was more in the tank for me. That's what I say to myself. And then I remember how I felt the next day. I felt like I was 80 years old and I got into a car crash. Genuinely. So I was like, okay, I really did what I could do on this race.
Yeah.
And then the next day I felt 70. And then the next day after that I felt 60 and 50 and 40. And it took 6 days for me to get back to 50 years old. Which, does that sound right from yours?
Yeah, that's about right. I think within a week you feel back to somewhat normal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, just talking about this gets me so excited for what is going to come on set. What was the difference for you between your first official marathon and your second?
Oh, dude. Night and day. Without a doubt. Yeah. And it was only 3 months apart.
Same for me.
Yeah. It's
Wow.
very night and day. Because I think a lot of it was, and I ran faster. I ran, my first marathon I ran 3:01. Second marathon I ran 2:58. And it was 3 months apart. So it's not like I got, that much more fit necessarily within 3 months. It's just, I think just mentally so much better. And like the strategy going into it, like I carb loaded, I had way better fueling. Like just the pacing strategy, like how I approached race day, like went out nice and easy versus the first race. I like went out way too fast, bonked so hard, like mile 20.
Oh my God.
So yeah, I think just again, within 3 months, you can't build that much physical fitness. So much of it was just the strategy and the mentality behind everything, which is so cool. Which shows you the power of your mind.
How long does it take to build real physical fitness?
It's about 2 months. So, but the issue with doing 2 marathons 3 months apart is like you spend basically a month recovering, getting back to where you kind of were.
I see.
And then by the time you start kind of building again, you have to taper and run again. So it's like, maybe 1% of fitness could have been built in that time. But really it's like 2 months to get real physical adaptations, like noticeable physical fitness.
Yeah. I was thinking for my next one, it would be sometime in the fall.
Yeah.
Based on, is that what you would recommend?
Yeah, I think every 6 months is ideal.
Yeah.
Because you build up for 4 months roughly for a marathon, depending on how many you've done. Then you recover for a month or two, kind of chill, just run off a feel. And then you spend another 3 to 4 months building back up, basically. So I think that every 6 months seems like a pretty good cadence.
Is that what you're on right now?
I'm not. Don't listen to what I'm doing right now.
I was like, wait, let me think about this.
No.
The post that you have of marathon. It's like what, 6 in 6 months?
Okay, I'll refine my statement. I will say every 6 months for like a big push, like a big effort. I think if you're really trying to PR and get better and better, that's where every 6 months. But you can do little things within there. Like I'm fortunately now to the point where like 4 marathons in like 4 weeks is like nothing. It's like you can just go do it, which sounds absurd, but it's like the effort level is so much lower versus on like a race day. Like race day, I can't walk. I can barely walk the next day.
Always.
Yeah, just because your muscles, the impact. If you're racing it the right way, I think you'll feel that way the next day.
the same way that I felt in Memphis. Similar?
Yeah, I think if you're doing it right, because that means you're really pushing yourself.
Good.
But I think the more you do it, maybe it's a little bit less and less. It's so subjective.
Yeah. Good to know. And do you think that 9 minutes taking off my PR, like it sounds like you went from 3:01 to 2:58.
I think I could have ran faster though, but the goal was 2:58.
Gotcha.
So I cut.
You got the goal.
Yeah, I quit while I was ahead, basically. So 9 minutes. I mean, I don't know. I have to look at your training probably to actually give you a definitive answer.
Fair.
But it's definitely realistic. I mean, I've seen people within a year. Like one guy I'm coaching a year ago, he ran a 4:30, and then we're going for 3:05 within 12 months.
Wow.
An hour and 25 minutes off of a marathon time is nuts. So yeah, you can make so much progress in such a short amount of time with running. Especially, it's like newbie gains. It's like lifting. So much of it is just getting your nervous system woken up and understanding the strategy behind it rather than he got 8 minutes fitter. Really, it's just mentally, I think so.
That's good to know.
Yeah. How has running played a role in your meditation practice? Because to me, running is so meditative.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, it's a spiritual thing for me. It's like you run around that lake and you just listen to what comes in. I get downloads. I get, insights. I get to interact with people who I see. I was doing a 60-mile run a week ago, saw my friend Harry, and we just had a great conversation in the middle of the run. I was like, oh my God, where else can I do this? And where else is this given to me? So I feel really grateful to have the Austin loop that we can train at. And it's been really spiritual. It's been really every time I run, I feel connected to God.
Yeah. That's powerful.
Yeah.
The runner's high is so real.
Yeah.
Have you ever experienced where you're like, wow, this must be the runner's high?
Yeah. I think I just feel so good from running.
Yeah.
And it must be the runner's high. That's the only way to explain it.
Endorphins, serotonin. There's definitely chemical things happening when we run. It's so cool. Yeah. I think I was telling you after our last podcast, I don't think we actually talked about it on the podcast, but psychedelics and running, especially a really hard effort, it's this transcendental experience. It's enlightening almost. And I think you can get that from running if you really truly push yourself past what you thought was possible.
I think there's a huge part too when you hit a new PR or you go a longer distance or whatever it is, when there's some level of improvement that you could feel, just you're moving faster.
Yeah.
It's oh my God, how is this happening?
Yeah.
The progress is addicting.
You build so much confidence through it.
You build confidence. You build ability to trust yourself, ability to feel like you're controlling it, ability to feel like you're on top of the world. I mean, running has been one of the most important habits to build a connection with God, to be closer spiritually.
Yeah.
And running has also just been one of the most important habits to make me feel better on the day to day.
Do you feel like now that you're hooked into running, you'll do it forever?
I don't know if I'm ready to commit to forever,
Yeah.
but I do know I really love it. And I can't imagine a world in which I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
I just love planning. I love seeing my day. I love seeing things so clearly. It's like going to the cabin in the woods for an hour. So
yeah,
I really appreciate that part of it because I get such a clear picture to my own life and all the pieces.
And it makes you physically healthy too. It's like a byproduct.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so great.
Running's the best, man.
I love that.
I'm so happy you have paved the way in some sense for...
That's a bold statement.
You paved it for me and Zach.
I mean, it got you a 3:39 marathon. I mean, that's a fantastic marathon. I'm not that I can take credit for that, but aided in the process.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I would not have had as many electrolytes as I had if it wasn't for you.
Did you cramp up at all?
Not at all.
There we go.
Not at all.
I love that. What's your plan Sunday?
Yes.
Sub 3:30?
Sub 3:30.
What do you think that'll take?
It'll take you helping me.
Okay. No. You do it regardless if I'm there or not.
That's true. I think it will take me really just appreciating the moment to an even greater degree and asking myself, how much more can I push? My average heartbeat beats per minute was 154 for the Memphis marathon. And it's like, if I did 160, would I hit sub 330? It's just a little more pain for eternal glory.
That's right. Suffer now for tomorrow's victories. There's some quote about that. I don't know. I can give you a whole bunch of tips and stuff if you're really trying to optimize.
Yes.
I can help you out.
You want to tell them now?
I mean, yeah, why not? We can do it later.
Yeah, whatever you want.
Tell other people, I guess, too. I mean, I think one of the biggest things, Austin's a very hilly course. I don't know how Memphis was. Probably hilly.
A little hilly, but not as much.
Austin's like 1,000 feet of elevation gain. So for a marathon, that's quite a bit.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is like within the first half marathon. Mm-hmm. So if you just really, it takes more discipline during a race to go slow. Like just be really disciplined and not go out too fast. Like if you're trying to go 3:30, I would say go out at like don't break 8-minute pace till like mile 13, basically. Just get through the hills. Like just keep it between maybe like 7:55 to like 8:10 pace. And then you can make up that time in the back half because it's pretty flat. So you can push a little bit more. But yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things is just like the pacing strategy. I think that's where most people blow up is they just go out way too fast. Because the marathon, it's like, the adage of it's a marathon, not a sprint. It's like you got to really take it slow, take your time, ease into it. And then you can save that energy for the back half.
Yeah. The first 4 miles is straight hill.
Yeah.
I've done it now twice or 3 times.
Yeah.
And I feel like that'll test you because you want to go fast and you want to stay slow. And that's my strategy, at least.
Everybody feels good the first 16 miles of a marathon. Yeah.
I really liked what Casey Neistat told my friend Zach, which was the marathon is broken up into 2 parts. The first 20 and the last 6. Yep. And I had that playing in the first marathon the whole time of like, okay, you feel great at mile 16 right now. And also like you're not even halfway done at mile 16. At mile 18, you're not halfway done. When I had that, it gave me a lot of peace.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed that mindset of it.
Did you watch Casey's video that he just posted last week?
No.
Oh, you got to watch it. Are you a Casey Neistat fan?
Yeah. I mean, I've been involved and seen his stuff throughout the years, but.
Yeah, he just posted one. It's like basically telling his whole marathon journey and of like this whole pursuit of trying to run sub 3.
Wow.
And I think it took him, it's like 20, I think it was over 20 marathons to finally do it. And it's just like, it's such a good video. I definitely recommend watching it.
I will, and especially in the next 2 days.
Yeah.
I'm definitely watching it in the next 2 days.
It gives you, just because it's Casey, so it's like more inspirational motivation rather than like, here's how I did it. It's just like the relentless pursuit of it is basically what allowed him to do it, which is cool.
Do you have anything like that in your own life right now where you're like, if I hit this would be miraculous?
I mean, I'm training to run my first 100-mile race in June. And I don't know if I can finish it or not. I think I can finish it, but I don't know until I go out and try. And that 100 miles has just always seemed so intimidating. Because it's 100 miles, like it's pretty damn far. And it's a really mountainous race too. So like that's like kind of the thing always in the back of my mind right now, probably for the next 4 to 5 months.
You just have that 100-mile just like eating you out.
Because I know how hard it's going to be. It's the hardest physical thing I've ever done by far. Like harder than a 244 marathon, harder than 62-mile loops in a parking lot. Like it's definitely gonna be the hardest thing. Just like how this Sunday is gonna be the hardest thing. Do you think it'll be the hardest physical thing you've ever done?
It could be.
Up until this point, what's been the hardest physical thing you've ever endured?
That's a great question. I think doing 75 hard while I had an allergic reaction and then doing workouts anyway and going through it. That was one that was like, that was actually difficult. But I think the marathon on 1 day notice was the most difficult.
You had 1 day notice for that?
Yeah.
That was the second one you did with Matt.
Yeah. He texted me the day before and I was like, at first I was like, I don't want to do this. And then I was like, yeah, let's do it.
Damn.
And so that was the hardest. But then that was the hardest mentally. But then the hardest physically was the Memphis one because I was shot for a week after. Yeah. Couldn't walk. Felt like I was in a different place.
The second one, doing it on the dirt trail, had to help.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely helped.
What about maybe mentally? Like, what do you think? Is there anything in your life that has been mentally harder than that marathon?
No.
Really?
I think that was the most difficult thing that I've done mentally.
Yeah, I think the coolest part about that is it was voluntary.
Yeah.
You didn't have to go do that, but you chose to do it.
Yeah, and I felt like the feeling that I got was I could have chose to do this at any point in my life. Like, wow, it's always available to you.
Yeah.
It is always available.
We could go do it right now.
We could go do it right now, right? Like, and I guess it's actually not always available because you're like, oh, I'm supposed to be doing this instead of, but it genuinely is.
Yeah.
And I think that we don't even give ourselves, I didn't give myself the option to think that it was possible until Matt suggested it. And so how else are we compromising ourselves and saying to ourselves, oh, I'm not able to yet, or I'm not fit enough yet, or I just ran a marathon, so therefore I can't, or whatever it is, like the bullshit.
Yeah.
That I just...
Self-limiting.
Yeah. And I think that's why having people in your life who are willing to push you and who are willing to say, not just in running, but in other aspects of in meditation, in self-awareness, in podcasting, in business, whatever it is, people be like, are you sure that's all you could do? And for you to be like, yeah, I can do more. And also I don't want to. That's completely fine. And also for you to be like, now there's freedom in the possibility for you to do more if you'd like.
Yeah. Let's end it right there. That's money.
Yeah.
I love that.
This was amazing.
Dude, this was fun. I feel like we could talk forever.
Yeah.
I have so many questions I want to ask you still, but I know you're busy. I'll let you go. You got another podcast to get to. Where's the best place for people to find you, connect with you?
Hey, Danny Miranda on Instagram or Twitter, and the Danny Miranda Podcast. And if you're interested in coaching, hit me up with a DM because I would love to expand this coaching, and I love doing it. So
beautiful. This is powerful, dude. Thanks for coming on.
And thanks for doing this. You're really great as a host, and I'm so excited to see this continue to develop into an amazing thing because you're very talented on it.
Thanks, dude. Likewise. I feel like I've learned a lot from you, and I've only hung out with you 2 times.
Likewise.
Hell yeah. All right. Thanks, man. Goodbye, everybody.
Peace.
Thank you so much for tuning into the show. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a review, and share it with a friend. We'll see you in the next one.